Is that how they do it? No. How do they hold their guns? I forgot. You know, like the whole...
Who?
I don't...
Spies?
I have some exciting news for you today. At the current moment, I have exactly 99 YouTube subscribers. I have a plan to do a giveaway when I reach 100 subscribers, and who knows, that could be before the video is even posted. So maybe by the time you're seeing this, I'm already at like 102 or 105. So in any case, keep an eye on my Instagram page and keep watching videos to wait for that announcement because it's going to be a good one. Today though, I have a book review for the book The Love Interest by Cale Dietrich. I think that's how you might say it. I don't know. All these authors have really hard names to pronounce, so I never know if I'm butchering it or not. Whatever. Anyway, so this was in the May 2017 Book of the Month box, and it was a pretty fun read. I have some issues with it though, so keep watching to find out what I think. The Love Interest has a really exciting premise, which is why I picked it up in the first place. It's about an agency that sends out love interests to people who are in their late teens, early 20s, whatever, who are single, but who have some great potential for success in the future. You know, future geniuses, people who might be great business people in the future, athletes who could do great things, whatever. So they send out these love interests who are people that are tailored to kind of fit that person specifically. And then once that person falls in love with the love interest, then that love interest can then send back information, like sensitive information about that person to the agency, who then sells it to the highest bidder. So basically they just tailor these love interests to be whatever that person might want them to be, and then that way they can have a spy on the inside for the rest of that person's life. And it's really interesting, actually. So it's kind of a cool premise. That's why I was like, oh, this could be a really cool book to read. And this book, it sounds really, really cheesy, but that's the funny part. They send out a bad and a nice to each girl, basically, that they're trying to catch. So they'll send out like the typical bad boy, and then they'll send out the typical nice guy, and then whoever she chooses is like her love interest for the rest of her life, hopefully, if he can maintain her interest. And then that person's the spy that sends back the information. But they send out a bad and a nice so that the girl will have like different options. That way it's just kind of like all the bases are covered, basically. But then the scary part of this is that whoever she doesn't choose gets executed, because that person is no longer of use and they have secrets now, like that they were a love interest at some point. So that person will get executed, and end of the story for them. But this book kind of subverts those cheesy kind of spy and love notions, the kind of silly YA culture of like love at first sight. It kind of subverts all of that and flips the narrative on its head and does something completely different than what you're thinking it's going to do. So the mission is clear, but the outcome is very unexpected. So first, some of the things that I really liked about this book were, of course, the premise, because it's really interesting and different. But what I liked more than just the premise itself was the promise that something here was going to be completely different than the reader's expectations. And I really like when books do that, because it's a lot more interesting, of course, than some cliche story. And YA books are full of cliches. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like when you're a teenager, it's kind of fun to go into a book knowing that, you know, everyone's going to fall in love and be happy at the end of the book. Like that's a nice thing when you're a teenager and things just never work out the way they're supposed to in your head, right? But what I love about this book is that the author has this kind of mission to challenge the expectations that we have of YA literature. And I appreciate that a lot. I mean, two spies in love or falling in love is a really interesting premise to begin with, and it's kind of fun and actiony and silly. But this book gives it a little bit deeper thought and takes that and runs with it, I guess, in a way that makes you kind of question everything that you've thought about how we approach love stories. Another thing that I really appreciated about this book is that the pacing and the action are really good. So from the very get-go, you don't really have a clue what's happening to the main character because you're just in his head the whole time. So you kind of learn the secrets as he reveals them to the reader, and you learn secrets as he learns them, which I think is a really good strategy in a book because it kind of keeps you on your toes at all times. Like you're not really ever sure what's going on until he decides that we're going to know what's going on. And this book does that really well. I think that at first I thought, oh, maybe they should be switching perspectives between the bad and the nice, but really it was kind of cool to have it only from the nicest perspective, because then anything that happens from the bad guy is something that we can't, like, that we are unaware of. Like, we don't know what his intentions are. We don't know if he's keeping secrets, if he's being totally honest. So we're seeing everything from Caden's perspective. That's the nice. And we're just getting like these glimpses of the bad in his personality, but we just don't really quite know because, I mean, he's a spy. He's literally a paid liar. I mean, I guess not really paid. They're not like giving them money, but he's like basically groomed to be a liar and an actor. So you're constantly questioning, like, okay, is this real? Like, is this, you know, interesting story that's playing out? Is this actually what's really happening? Or am I being lied to the same way that the main character could be being lied to right now? Unfortunately for me, even though this book had a really great mission, it missed the mark quite a few times for me. And one of the issues I had with it was the writing style, or just the writing quality, really, in general. I think the worst part about this book was the dialogue. It almost felt like the writer, even though I know that he's a pretty young guy, it almost felt like he'd never spoken to a teenager before, because the teenagers in this book have really weird, stiff, kind of forced dialogue that makes it seem like they don't really know actual filler words that teenagers use these days. So they use the word just as a filler word constantly, and it was a little weird. Like, it felt kind of off. Like, I've never actually heard a teenager talk like that in my life. And there are a lot of times when characters will say things that just kind of are, it's as though they're completing an action and then stating a fact right after it. Like, they stop their action, turn, and speak, like as if you're watching a play, but in a bad way. So there's this part where one of the fathers said, or the mother of one of the teenagers says, "Great, now, comma, I've known you for a long time, so I don't feel bad asking for help." It's just very wooden. Very strange thing to say to a person. If she's actually known him that long, I'm not sure why she feels the need to tell him that she's known him a long time. It feels indicative, it feels forced, and it just feels really awkward. And I think an editor could have done a really great job with this book and kind of helped to reform some of those sentences. Or even really reading the book out loud helps a lot, because if you read something out loud and it sounds awkward, then it is awkward. So that's maybe just a writing tip in general. Read your books out loud. Your dialogue will flow so much better if you just say it all out loud or have somebody read it to you, because you know what the inflections are supposed to be. You know how the book is supposed to be read out loud, but a stranger or a friend is not going to know. So if they're reading it out loud and it sounds forced and weird, it's forced and weird and it needs to be changed. Another writing issue that I had with this book was the fact that since we're in Caden's thoughts all the time, we're getting all the information as he's getting it and we're hearing his thoughts in real time. But there are moments where his thoughts feel disjointed and kind of awkward and unconnected from the action that's going on. So we'll see him come to a conclusion, get information, and then come to a new conclusion. But it doesn't ever feel like there's any path to his thoughts. It just kind of feels like conclusion, 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 or conclusion, contradiction, conclusion, contradiction, as he kind of wrestles with things. But it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of wrestling. It just feels like instant conclusion to instant contradiction, when I feel like there should be a little more hemming and hawing going on in there. I mean, there should be moments where he's kind of thinking of all the information that he's been giving and kind of going over it in his head, as opposed to just the things he might say out loud. You know, I've decided this or I've decided that. In reality, in our heads, we're going over those things so much. And if we're in his thoughts, I feel like we would see that more, but it really kind of just feels like he's going, yes, I'm really happy about this thing. Well, actually, I'm not that happy about that thing. Oh, but actually, I am happy about that thing. That's kind of how it feels when I feel like there should be more of a natural flow to his thoughts, and I'm just not getting that from this book. Despite some of my issues with the love interest, I really love that Cale Dietrich was so ambitious for his debut novel. It takes a lot of guts to satirize the exact genre that you're writing in, because this book is so clearly meant to satirize YA literature culture and our expectations of love and the behaviors that we both laud and demonize in just the general YA culture. That's a big deal, and it's not an easy mark to hit. Although this book didn't quite hit that mark for me, it was overall a really, really fun read, and I would recommend it to anybody who's looking for a YA read that is a little bit more sarcastic and a little bit more diverse than what you're normally expecting from YA literature. Please let me know in the comments if you've read this book and if you liked it or if you didn't like it, and what your issues were with it if you didn't like it, or what you loved about it if you loved it. You know, I want to know both ends of the spectrum here. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye. Since this is a book about spies, I'm going to demonstrate some spy behavior. So you hold your double guns like this, and you shoot your water guns at people, but the kill shot, of course, is flipped to the side. You have to wear sunglasses when you're a spy so that no one can recognize you. Otherwise, you're going to get kidnapped by a foreign country, and they're going to torture you with like bamboo or something scary like that. No, it's not. No, it's like you put someone on top of bamboo and it grows into their body, because it grows a whole foot a day.